Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to another edition of Essential Inspirational Highlights. This evening, my viewers, lesson 4 on the healing series. It is my desire that you will be encouraged and to continue pressing forward for your healing. No medical condition or disease is too hard for Jesus to heal. The scripture lesson text will be coming from Mark, the 10th chapter, verses 46 through 52. It states, starting with the 46th verse, and they came to Jericho. And as he went out of Jericho with his disciples and a great number of people, blind Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus, sat by the highway side begging. And when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out and say, Jesus, thou son of David, mercy on me. In verse 48, and many charged him that he should hold his peace. But he cried the more a great deal, thou son of David. And Jesus stood still and commanded him to be called. And they called the blind man, saying unto him, be of good comfort, rise, he calleth thee. And he, casting away his garment, rose and came to Jesus. In verses 51 to 52, and Jesus answered and said unto him, what wilt thou that I should do unto thee? The blind man said unto him, Lord, that I might receive my sight. And Jesus said unto him, go thy way, thy faith hath made thee whole. And immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus in the way. And the topic for this evening is be bold. Let's that topic one more time. Be bold. In this lesson, Jesus Christ and the disciples came to Jericho. Later on, they left a big crowd of people. A blind beggar by the name of Bartimaeus was sitting beside the road as Jesus was going by. And back in the biblical days, my listeners, it was common to see beggars in cities. Some people with disabilities or crippling ailments had to rely on the generosity of the public for assistance. They could not perform physical labor. During the time of Moses, God specifically gave instructions in Leviticus, the 25th chapter, verses 35 to 38, on how the Israelites should help their poor brethren. And it states, beginning with Leviticus 25th chapter again, verse 35. And if thy brother be waxing poor and falling in decay with thee, then thou shalt relieve him. Yea, though he be a stranger or a sojourner, that he may live with thee. Verse 36, take thou no usury of him or increase, but fear thy God, that thy brother may live with thee. Thou shalt not give him thy money upon usury, nor lend him thy victuals for increase. 38, I am the Lord your God, which brought you forth out of the land of Egypt, to give you the land of Canaan, and to be your God. My listeners, as you can clearly see, these guidelines were ignored and forgotten by family members and the general population. Being poor was hard enough, but having a disability made it twice as hard to survive. So who was Bartimaeus? Bartimaeus, a blind beggar, was the son of Timaeus. The scripture does not state whether he lost his sight or if he was born blind. There was no mention of any friends caring for or helping him by the side of the road. He was alone and had to beg for survival. However, we do know that there was nothing wrong with his hearing. Bartimaeus heard about Jesus and his miracles from many people passing by him. Jesus Christ was the talk of the town. His fame spread throughout countless cities far and near. From his miraculous stories, Bartimaeus already believed that if given the opportunity to see Jesus, he would be healed. Learning that Jesus would be passed by his way, Bartimaeus knew that he had to come up with a plan to get the attention of Jesus with a huge crowd of people. The blind beggar knew he had no chance to mingle with the crowd because he could not see Jesus. The man could trip and fall, knowing that he could not visually see Jesus. Bartimaeus knew he could make a lot of noise. The blind beggar could hear Jesus talking and the crowd as well. To get Jesus, Bartimaeus took his chance by crying out as loud as he could and said, Jesus, thou said it twice. The people tried to shut him up, but Bartimaeus did not feel intimidated by the crowd. He was not going to let anyone stop him from receiving his blessing. Bartimaeus was excited and wanted to meet Jesus face to face. The blind beggar knew within his heart that he was going to get his healing. Bartimaeus was not going to be silenced by the crowd. He had to look out for himself to better his condition. There is an old saying, if you don't look out for yourself, no one else will. The crowd did not have his interests at heart. Now, listeners, notice how Bartimaeus addressed Jesus. He called him David. He believed that Jesus was the Messiah even before he met him personally. son of David. Now, my listeners, true. Jesus is a descendant of David through his legal father, Joseph, and by blood through Mary, his mother. The proof is in his genealogy. The New Testament provides two accounts of the genealogy of Jesus. And as you can see in Matthew, the first chapter, verses 1 through 17, it follows the descendants of Joseph. And we have Luke, the third chapter, verses 23 to 38, it follows the descendants of Mary. Who highlights right from the beginning Jesus' title. In verse 1, it begins calling Jesus the son of David, signifying his royal origin. Also, the son of Abraham, showing that he was an Israelite. The Old Testament prophecy. This fulfills the Old Testament prophecies about the Messiah's genealogy in Isaiah, the 9th chapter, verses 6 through 7. And this is one of the proofs to show that Jesus is the true Messiah. And it mentions the prophecy of the Messiah's birth and the descendant of the line of David. Now let's take a look at the effects of Bartimaeus' strategy. Well, my listeners, Bartimaeus' strategy worked. His cries got the attention of Jesus. Just think, if this blind beggar would have listened to the crowd, he would have missed the opportunity of his lifetime to get healed by the Messiah. Jesus called for the blind man. It's amazing to see that the same crowd who tried to silence the blind man for crying out to Jesus, and the crowd of people told Bartimaeus that Jesus was calling for him to come. My listeners, that people are just unpredictable and could change like a lizard. Before Bartimaeus rose to his feet to meet Jesus, the 50th verse stated that he cast away his garment before meeting Jesus. This verse is very noteworthy. My listeners, I know you are asking, why is this verse so important? Thank you for asking, my listeners. Cloak. The garment in this lesson refers to the cloak. A cloak in the biblical days was a very valuable piece of clothing. Most people own just one. A cloak could be used as an overcoat, a bag to carry items, something to sit on, and a pledge for a debt. It also served as a blanket for nighttime. This is just an example here of a cloak. Say about a cloak. Exodus the 22nd chapter, verses 26 and 27. It reads, if thou at all take thy neighbor's raiment to pledge, thou shalt deliver it unto him by that the sun go down. 27. For that is his covering only. It is his raiment for his skin, wherein shall he sleep. And it shall come to pass, when he crieth unto me, that I will hear, for I am gracious. And the next scripture we have is Deuteronomy, the 24th chapter, verses 12 and 13. And it says, beginning of the 12th verse, and if the man be poor, thou shalt not sleep with his pledge. 13. In any case, thou shalt deliver him the pledge again when the sun goeth down, that he may sleep in his own raiment, and bless thee. And it shall be righteousness unto thee before the Lord thy God. According to the Mosaic law, the cloak was a valuable possession, and it could not be withheld from a debtor overnight. Let me repeat that again. According to the Mosaic law, the cloak was valuable. It was a valuable possession, and it could not be held from a debtor overnight. God was very concerned how the poor were being treated. If a poor used his cloak for a collateral of a loan, the cloak was to be returned by sundown so the person could stay warm throughout the night. Just use a cloak. Well, my listeners, when Bartimaeus was blind, the cloak was probably used to collect his monies. Since he could not see, people would drop their monies on the cloak to make it easier for the blind man to gather up his cash. Without the cloak, Bartimaeus would be searching all over the ground for loose coins. The cloak played a major role in collecting money for his survival. Why did Bartimaeus cast out this valuable cloak? There are two possible reasons. About to heal him, he would not need this cloak anymore for his livelihood. He will be able to do physical labor and make a salary. It was an act of faith for Bartimaeus to cast off his garments. He truly believed that Jesus was going to heal him from his blindness. Bartimaeus would not have to put his trust in his cloak for support anymore. He could put his entire, let me say that again. He could put his entire trust in Jesus Christ. His future was in the hands of Jesus. Another reason Bartimaeus may have cast out his valuable cloak was because he wanted to be free of any clutter getting in his way to meet Jesus. With him being so excited and wanting to meet Jesus, he wanted to avoid any accidents of falling, tripping over the cloak, or getting his feet tangled up. Bartimaeus did not want his cloak to become an obstacle. When the blind man approached Jesus, Jesus asked him point blank, what would you like for me to do? The blind man specifically stated that he wanted his sight. He was bold and direct. The blind man was not shy about his request. My listeners, Jesus knew what Bartimaeus needed. He was testing his faith. Jesus told Bartimaeus to go his way. His faith made him whole, and he immediately received his sight. Rather than going his way, Bartimaeus followed Jesus down the road. Take note that Bartimaeus never went back to retrieve his cloak. He left his old life and looked forward to a brand new life with his sight, praising Jesus Christ for the miracle in his life. We learn from Bartimaeus. Don't allow people to silence your voice or shut you down when you are trying to get a blessing from the Lord. Be bold and speak up. Tell Jesus specifically what he's never too busy to hear your concerns. We must have faith. If you are sick or dealing with an illness, don't let a crowd of people or a crowd of naysayers knock down your faith or deter you from seeking the Lord for your healing. Keep your mind focused on Jesus. The majority does not rule. If Bartimaeus had listened to the crowd, his cloak to become an obstacle. He cast it aside for a better future by placing his faith in Jesus Christ for his healing. Don't allow obstacles hinder you from getting your blessing. Be bold and expect the impossible. Jesus Christ is just a prayer away. He's never too busy to take time to listen to what you have to say. There's nothing too hard for Jesus. He is a healer. Remember, my listeners, be bold. For tuning in to Essential Inspirational Highlights. I am your host, Sister Jane. I will be back in 2 weeks on Friday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Have a good evening.